андеграунд мне ближе, потому что там ценность авторитета не так важна. Там важен авторитет мысли. То есть, если твоя мысль авторитетна, окей.
Привет всем. Подкаст с Эшем, с Раананом Хэшбергом. Многие из вас наверняка не знают этого комика, но это крутой чувак. Он выступает регулярно в Нью-Йорке, он был на Late Late Show. Это такой аналог вечернего Урганта, но американское шоу. Очень долго выступает, уже порядка 15 лет, но мы об этом поговорим еще. В Камеди Селларе выступает. Но мы у него все это спросим. Давайте начнем. Окей. Hi. One more time. Hi.
I hope you
introduced you.
I have no idea.
He did a little bit. No, he introduced you, told about you that you've been on Late Late Show.
I saw that. Late Late Show is actually the same in English. He just said Late Late
Yeah.
Show.
Sorry.
And podcast is the same. And yeah, you don't have you said podcast, huh? No Russian word for podcast?
No, it was about this podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, I will add in the
podcast. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, universal language. Well, thanks for having me. So I'm talking to Ash, and then he translates to you, basically.
No,
I don't need translation. I can understand almost everything.
Okay, you can understand, just not. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks for having me, and this is exciting. It's my first international podcast, I think.
Может ли он чуть-чуть подробнее рассказать о себе? Я вкратце его регалии перечислил, но может он чуть лучше еще о себе расскажет.
So he introduced you, told something about you, but it will be cool if you told something about yourself, about your career,
Да,
where
типа,
it started.
комики его наверняка знают, но некоторые зрители
Because many comedians in Russia may not know you, so we want to introduce you.
I assume hardly any of them know me, but but I like how you were like, some of them might not know you here.
No, you don't know. You don't know.
Some
we
of them
have
might
our
not know
nerds,
you
okay?
in Moscow, but most people don't know me in America, so I assume. I started in Kentucky, which is southern states. And I started there, and then I moved to New York about 6 years ago. I've been doing comedy about 15 years now, and I've it's my career. I love it. I've been on the Late Late Show with James Corden and Comedy Central. Do they have Comedy Central in Russia?
Yes, we watched a lot.
I'm such an idiot.
We watch YouTube clips, not the television.
I don't know anything. Like, I'm an idiot. I'm just going to be like, do you have water fountains in Russia? Do you all walk in Russia? Do you all breathe there? Do you have breathing in Russia? I'm just an idiot American. But yeah, I've been doing comedy, and I live in New York, and that's it. Yeah. And now I'm, on this podcast.
I want just to ask something, because I was listening podcast with you, and one of it that was from 2016. You said there that you started in New York. One time you tried comedy there, and then you went to Kentucky.
Yes, so I'm from Kentucky, and I went to college in New York.
Yeah.
I went to SUNY Purchase, which is this college that ever since I went there, I thought it was a good school, but ever since I went there, it's been the go-to reference for a bad college in like a movie. Like everyone always is like, oh, that idiot, what did he go to SUNY Purchase? Like I've seen it now in 4 different movies and shows as like the reference for an idiot college.
Like community college, like that.
Yeah, it's not. It's a state school, but it's basically like that. So like I read a book recently, Russian book. Russian book. Like it's like you give a shit. But
which one?
Well, not Russian. I mean Russian American. Sad True Love Story. Super Sad True Love Story. Gary Scheinhardt. But he even there he's like that moron probably went to SUNY Purchase. Like it's just like the go-to reference. But and then while I was at college, I went in, it was upstate New York. I went into the city and did comedy once at this club that no longer exists. Oh no, I did it twice at an open mic. And then didn't do comedy for a while, and then went back to. I got into drugs, got shit crazy,
Yeah.
and then went back to my hometown. That's when I started really pursuing stand up in the comedy mecca, Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, it is. So I wasn't trying to say like you're lying. You started in New York. What I was trying to ask is,
I know this is like gotcha journalism now. I'm fucking caught.
yeah, you're online now. You can't you can't hide
We
the
have
truth.
reports that you're not actually Jewish. You've been lying about that. Ah, fuck.
Our Russian hackers are working on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I want to ask is, as I know, open mics in New York and like in other states are really different. Like in New York, you get only comedians and they're not listening to you. But in smaller cities, you get decent crowd and you can work out your material in front of real people.
That's correct. Comedians
Yes.
are not real people.
They're not. We all know that.
They're not. No, that is correct. That is correct. In New York, there's such an abundance of comedy that the open mics are just the fucking comics in the room watching each other, and you get 2 minutes. It's awful. And then when I started in Louisville, after I did New York once for the fact checkers, I started in Louisville, Kentucky. All the open mics there were front of real crowds. Yeah, and it was much. An open mic in a different city is like a pretty good show in New York.
Oh,
Like an open mic somewhere else, like a good show in New York, you know. But that's the way it is, because New York, there's just 5 billion shows happening, you know.
А ты уже про open майки начал спрашивать, да? То есть он говорит, что поначалу, когда он начинал на open майках, тоже были люди?
В Нью-Йорке не было, там, где он начинал, были.
Ага, ну я как раз вот этот вопрос хотел спросить, типа у нас уже на протяжении 10 лет, скажи, на open майках люди присутствуют и вообще нет ощущения, что типа эта тенденция со временем проходит или эти люди могут остаться навсегда, как он думает?
You better not be talking shit about me right now.
You wouldn't know. Just relax. I know you have anxieties, but just relax. So yeah, what he was saying that in Moscow we like our open mics are decent shows until now. Like we can say that Moscow comedy is booming right now for the last few years. But we still get decent open mics where you do a good show. So do you is this tendency going down? Do you know how it happened in New York? It always was like that, or it just happened one day?
I guess I don't know. I moved here about 5 years ago, so I don't really know. But I just think in New York it was always. I think in New York that's just kind of like it's just a way. It's all about the number of shows, you know. So like, there's just so many shows in New York that like. A show where comics just work out shit is just gonna be other comics. That's just the way it is, because there's just so it's just, you know, when there's so many shows, it's much harder to have a good show. That's just kind of the way it is. And when there's so few shows, you know, it's like supply and demand. When there's few shows, you put on one show, it's like probably gonna be okay because there's just so few shows. So it's easier, you know. Yes, open mics have more audiences in other places, but they also just there's not that many shows happening in those cities.
Yeah.
So it's a supply and demand thing. But do you have comedy clubs in Moscow? How does it work there?
We had 2 for a while, and then they started to open all around the country. So, сколько сейчас клубов?
В Москве 5, 5 in Moscow, and maybe 5 more in other part of Russia.
Yeah, so we're in the start of comedy club era.
In the last couple years?
In Russia. Yeah, it happened.
And what is the, what are you allowed to, what's the range of freedom of speech there in terms of talking about politics?
Расскажи как раз, что Идрака на 10 дней посадили.
It's a great timing for this question because, to be honest, in clubs, you can talk all you like. Of course, sometimes you get hecklers. That's normal. Somebody will be upset, you know that. But on television or even on YouTube, that's much worse. And recently, we had our first case of arrested comedian for a joke. He was arrested for 10 days. So it's a trial period, I guess.
Was it was a joke? It was a joke he said live, or a joke he said on TV, or a
on
joke
YouTube.
On YouTube.
On YouTube. Yeah.
So when you say YouTube, like, do you mean like he said, like it was a film of him doing stand up that he posted on YouTube, or do you mean like more on the podcast?
We have a comedy club that's called Stand-up Club number one, and they have their own YouTube channel with different shows. One of that show was an improvisation panel show, and he told a joke there. People just took it out of context.
Yeah, there's like 1 million subscribers on this channel.
Yeah.
And the comedy club is called Stand-up Club number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You all, Russia still has your imaginative communist labeling things.
Pretty modest, you know.
Stand-up Club 1 section 12. So what was the joke? Oh, I guess I can't ask you what the joke is.
No, it's okay, I guess.
Can you say it, or are you gonna be in jail?
Yeah, it wasn't like something that you're not allowed to say. He was making fun of.
Looks like it was. He's in jail.
He was making he was making fun of a type of racism in Russia where if you're brown, you have problems with renting flat. They write like only for Slavic people. He was ranting about that, and he was making joke about like you can't judge about group of people with some isolated incidents. And then he said that once he was in an apartment and there was a shitty mattress, and the previous renters were Russians, so I suppose Russians put shit on them and then they go to sleep, which was just an example how it works.
Right.
But taking out of context, and the clip was like Russians put shit on themselves and something like that. So people got upset, and then like police intervened, and it's just.
It'd be so fucked up if like the police just broke in right now, right after you got done with that joke. They just broke in. I'm like, oh my god. I guess
was a good show.
Yeah, that's fucked up. So I mean, that's the thing. Like when you do comedy, there, like, do you stay away from politics and stuff, or just Russian, social commentary?
Recently, not. Like it's if pressure is bigger, then you want to oppose it. Like much worse. For a while, comedians were not talking about politics at all, and then everybody started to talk about it. So now we'll see how it goes after this case.
So this case is the first case where people are starting to kind of worry?
It's the first case with stand-up comedian. There were some other troubling cases, but this is the first time when somebody took the joke and arrested somebody for that.
It's so different in America. Like it's not, for us, it's all like, you can say what you want, but then people complain about like cancel culture, but it's not actual cancel culture. That like him getting arrested is actually like the government.
It's interesting.
But it's not freedom of speech here. There might be cancel culture, but it's not an issue of freedom of speech because it's not the government intervening. We use freedom of speech incorrectly here.
I get what you're saying, but it's interesting because many people here are saying that that's the same thing.
Interesting, really.
Because when Twitter gets angry at you, that doesn't stop there. You lose your job. Like it's kind of have this McCarthy era vibe.
Yeah.
Like you get blacklisted, something like that, and one day someone can kill himself because of that, and that will be
the ultimate canceling.
I know that's another problem of liberals. It's problem of corporations who always behave that way, but some people here think that it's the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same thing, but it has its problems for sure. But I don't think it's not the same. No one's going to jail for what they're saying, Though we did have that with Lenny.
In 60s.
Yeah. But like, no one's really going to jail. But it's still cancel culture is still an issue. But it is not freedom of speech exactly, in the sense that it's just as much, I have just as much freedom to say something as someone else has freedom to say, don't support that guy. You know what I mean?
Fine.
Раз уж,
It's equal freedom.
раз уж мы об этом заговорили, как он считает, вот это большое количество цензуры в Штатах, которое не позволяет о некоторых темах шутить остро, не является ли это последствием того, что многие комики в России считают, что на Netflix вот эти все комики со всего мира очень пресные концерты выходят, не хватает остроты. Как ему кажется, так ли это и где она, настоящая комедия? Может быть, то, что мы видим на Netflix, на все эти спешлы, это не самое смешное, что есть на самом деле?
Nice hearing someone in a different language. You can just zone out and it won't matter. You're not missing anything because you're just going to tell me. Like, I kind of want that for people who speak English. I just zone out and then just I have a second chance.
You can't do that in real conversations.
I have a second chance to catch up. Yeah.
So he was asking, like, do you think that cancel culture and like not allowance to speak on some racial themes or maybe other issues, it's ruining comedy in a way? Like, if you can't say anything you want, even as a joke, does it affect comedy in US? Because we see Netflix specials and most of them are pretty family friendly, and so
the American ones are family friendly.
Yeah.
Do you have, so do you not get all, you don't get all of them?
You don't have a lot of Doug Stanhope's in this area. He released a special recently, but there are not much of that type of comedy.
Yeah, I mean, this is the big argument in, you know, America, you know, about whether, you know, I don't know. It's kind of it's a tough argument because, like, it's just about people being sensitive, right?
Yeah.
And sensitivity is not like something you can, it's just a fact that crowds can sometimes be sensitive, you know, and you can't, it's not like over there where you're like, oh, there's a lack of freedom of speech, right? That's something you can change, you know, or at least fight to change or hope to change. But when it comes to audiences, as they've evolved, becoming more sensitive to racial issues, that's not something you can be like, there's a way to change this. It's just the way, it's just a zeitgeist. It's just the way things are happening right now. So I don't think it's an issue as much because I think, like, audiences have always had things they're sensitive about, and now they're very sensitive about race and sexism because it's come to light that so many of those issues are not, have been ignored for so long. So it's become a serious matter. So it's hard for audiences always to treat it as a laughing matter. But that doesn't mean you can't get people to laugh at it. It just means there's a challenge. But a challenge is fine. I mean, for me, so much of comedy is so much of a laugh is building tension that you then release with the laugh. So if an audience is sensitive, in a way, that's more potential for tension that you can get and then release. So in a way, sensitivity is not always the enemy. Sensitivity is the thing. The more sensitive, the more you can get them to laugh because the more they're afraid to laugh, you know? So I see it as I don't see that as a problem. I see that as a reality of just the way things are going. And then your challenge of doing what you've always needed to do, which is how do I build tension and then release it? You know?
That's a great point.
А в клубах, на живых выступлениях, типа в барах, есть места, где ты можешь шутить вообще без ограничений о чем угодно?
Exactly.
He was asking, like, are there any in the clubs? Do you have like total freedom, or like you get some kind of you can get in trouble for doing a set in a club, like if there are no cameras or something?
Well, the question is trouble by who, I guess, you know? I mean, like, there's no trouble from the government. So that's where it's different. You know, the police are not coming at any point. So we don't have that issue. Now, we have the issue of the court of public opinion, which is like, you know, for instance, okay, do you know this comic Ari Shaffir?
Yeah, sure.
So do you remember
about the Kobe thing?
Yes. So when he posted that, people went crazy, and or they were just very upset, and and people were literally calling clubs he was going to work at, saying they're having bomb threats. So he couldn't work at clubs for a while because the clubs were like, we're afraid. There's people calling in for bomb threats. So I mean, he's fine now, but that was like a way that you can get in trouble. Certain clubs don't want to have you. For the most part, it doesn't really happen. I mean, for the most part, there's like, I can't really remember the time someone said something on stage. I mean, the things that are big no-nos are saying the N-word, or saying stuff that's like, fairly prejudicial. But even that, it's like, I don't think there's much, it's pretty trivial compared to, I think, what at least the guy in your country dealt with, having to go to jail for 10 days,
I guess.
Немного, чуть-чуть к нему вернемся, а то мы на общие темы перешли. А где он сейчас в основном выступает? Типа, это какие-то туры или это в Нью-Йорке клубы? Если клубы, то какие?
Yeah, so where are you basing right now? You're in Kentucky?
No, I live in New York City.
Oh, you live in New York now.
Yeah.
And are you touring right now? Pandemic isn't a problem, is it?
No, I've been touring some. No, I've been touring a lot. Yeah, the pandemic is we are all vaccinated now. There's an issue. It's a new variant, obviously, the Delta, and I don't. So far, I've been touring where everyone's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen in the fall. But I also just want to say, I don't mean to trivialize cancel culture. I do think that is an issue, Yeah. It's hard to talk about as much when you say someone went to jail in your country, even though you're just like, yeah, he went to jail, but let's talk about the real issue, cancel culture. Like even you all are like, whatever, let's just the main issue. Cancel culture is still an issue in terms of just people, Twitter, people reacting very emotionally, and then corporations and the entertainment industry just bowing down and dropping people without due. These are still issues, but it's not freedom of speech exactly, but in the sense of the government. But there's still real issues of like, just people just so divided and wanting such punitive measures all the time, and not really wanting an open dialogue, which is a real issue, and just kind of wanting people to be punished all the time,
Yeah. So you now you perform in New York, right? Mostly.
New York, all over,
Yeah.
А где именно? В каких клубах? Бары?
What clubs, like Comedy Store or
so Comedy Store is in LA.
Oh, in LA, yeah.
I'm in New York, so I work at the Comedy Cellar.
Cellar.
And New York Comedy Club and clubs like that. Comedy Cellar's like, one of the better those are both clubs, And Comedy Cellar's a really cool club. I started working there like right before the pandemic.
То есть он прям резидент.
Да? Ну, да, он там работает в основном.
For us, Comedy Cellar's like stand-up comedy club #1.
Oh, that's cool, because we know about that club. Like David asked me before to talk about that. Yeah, we know about that club from Louis for the show.
That club.
And, for us, it has a cult status as well. Like we in Russia, we know about Cellar like as this dream club, and where you can maybe someday you can get there or something like that. It's like that place.
Yes. I got past, and then a month after I got past, the pandemic hit, so I had a bit of a hiatus. But then but then it was great. It came back during the pandemic, like before everyone got vaccinated. We had like glass partitions, literally like you were performing in front of glass. And people were eating. It was like it was like unofficial, because you couldn't have shows and sell tickets, but you could have entertainment while people were eating. So we'd have limited seating. People would be eating. There'd just be like maybe like 13 people. And then we'd all go in front of these glass partitions, like
that must be a weird experience.
And then you'd have like like Louis was there and Dave Attell, and we were all just kind of doing this weird open mic in front. And it was weird to perform in front of a glass partition because you kind of see your own reflection, So if you're bombing, you just see your face like be upset. You're
That's
like
something you don't want to see at this point.
yeah, you get to see your face be upset by how badly you're doing, and which is funny because it now adds this other face upset at you, but it's your face. You know, it's hard enough to look at someone else's face not enjoying it, but like, so yeah, we did that for a month before the thing kind of officially, and then it slowly kind of opened back up, and we still had the glass partition for a while, and then eventually it went back to. Now it's proof of vaccination. You have to have proof of vaccination to get in, you know.
Yeah.
And Comedy Селларе is a great club, and it's been a pretty cool experience to work there, you know.
А сколько сейчас приблизительно комиков в Нью-Йорке? Приблизительно, если он в курсе.
Can you estimate how many comedians are there in New York? Stand-up comedians. Just best guess.
I don't know. It's I feel like a lot less since the pandemic. I feel like a lot of people quit after the pandemic, but I don't know, maybe a couple. I'm terrible at this. Maybe like 10,000. I don't know. How many are in Moscow? What do you guess?
1,000 maybe. No, у нас, по-моему, даже 1,000 нет. 500,
It's around
500.
1,000. It should be around 1,000 when some comedy event happens. There's a lot.
Ну,
but,
это если прям
mostly,
совсем
yeah.
всех сразу легко.
It's hard to yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just...
No.
It's hard to define what it gets into how to define what a comedian like. Do you mean like full-time comedians? There's a lot of
Or open micers, yeah.
but then there's a lot of people. I was talking to a guy the other day who was interviewing me, and he asked how many comics, and he's like, I mean comics who make more than at least more than $30,000 a year. And I'm like, there's a lot of working comics who make less than $30,000 a year. It's like, just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're not
А я вот как раз...
comic. Yeah.
Как раз следующий вопрос про иерархию хотел спросить, типа, как молодые комики сейчас пробиваются, как приблизительно какой путь они проходят?
I'm sorry, technical problems. So do you have any hierarchy? Of course, you have any hierarchy in stand-up community, but how, like, if you're a new comedian, what's your way to get, to succeed in any sense? At least like to quit your day job. Let's talk about that.
Okay, well, I can only talk from my own experience. For me, when I started in Louisville, and I lived with my parents, and I went on the road a decent amount, and I thought I was a full-time comedian, but really I was just living with my parents and not having another job. But then I would work other jobs, and you think there's a moment where, in your head, you think there's a moment where you're like, one day I'm just going to officially become a full-time comic, and then I'm going to go to my manager at whatever bullshit restaurant I work at. I'm like, I'm a full-time comic now. Fuck you. But it doesn't work like that. What happens is you have other jobs, and then comedy keeps you from working those jobs a bunch, but you still need those jobs. It's not like you don't need those jobs. You're like, oh shit, I have to go on the road to do comedy, but fuck, I really need this other money. And then you like are begging to let them, you still work there, even though you're inconsistent. And then you're like working a couple jobs while doing comedy. And then eventually it slowly transitions out. But for me, I spent 8 years in Louisville and then on the road meeting comics. And then for me personally, like I started opening for a comedian named Kathleen Madigan, who was really the first comic who's a great comic. She's like a veteran, and she's great. And I started opening. She had like theater shows, so I was opening for her in theaters, and it was the first time I actually made like. I remember the first time I got a paycheck from her, I almost like wept because I was like, it wasn't that it wasn't that I could live fully off comedy, but it was this moment where like, oh, if I did this a decent amount, I could live fully off comedy.
Это через сколько лет было?
How many years you were in at that point when?
That was about, I think 8 years in maybe. And it was random. I I just opened for her at a club, and she liked me. And she does mainly theaters, but she does a couple clubs that she's loyal to. So fortunately, she doesn't see a lot of comics, so she didn't have a lot to compare me with. And she was like, "Hey, yeah, go on the road with me." And I went on the road, and it was like these really nice theaters, like 1,500, 2,000. And I was finally making some money. And then I made enough money that I could save up and go to New York.
Yeah.
So I went to New York. And then in New York, I still had to do some shitty jobs here and there, but I was slowly, you just slowly start making more money. I mean, I'm a full-time comic now, but like, it still doesn't, you still worry and shit.
Get by. Yeah.
Yeah. But,
And
gradual process.
I want to
еще
ask,
добавь от меня
going
тоже,
back.
К своему вопросу тоже добавь, просто 8 лет без заработка не возникало ли мысли покинуть, бросить все?
Yeah, I will ask one small question and then David's question. So, how do you get on the road? Like you're in Kentucky, you're doing some open mics or shows, and then you just go touring nationally.
So yeah, okay. So
how does it work?
Let me try to remember. Okay, so I started doing open mics and in Louisville at this comedy club, and it was a pretty easy system there. It's not really transparent, but it was this idea that you do open mics at the club, and eventually the club owner, this guy Tom Sobel, eventually he thought you were good enough to do a unpaid guest set at the club. So that was my first. I was just doing open mics, and then after maybe 2 years, he goes, "You can perform an unpaid guest set, but on the weekend where people have bought tickets,
Yeah.
And that was a big deal for me because that was like, okay, I'm not getting paid, but I'm performing to audience who have paid tickets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was huge.
I know.
Before that, it was just people open mic night. But I was like, oh shit, they're expecting a professional show. So that was my first big thing. Not even getting paid, but just fucking performing for paid people. And then maybe a year later, I got my first paid set. There was a little club across the river in Indiana called Bear's Place, and I got paid to host. I assume, is the structure similar in Russia? A host, feature, headliner? Or
no, we don't have that kind of shows. We have shows with 3 comedians, and one of them may be headliner, but the 2 others may do we don't have that structure. Like it's not something that happens all the time, but I know about it. Yeah.
And what is the structure for like a weekend at a stand-up comedy club #1? What are you saying there, like time-wise?
You can get show with bunch of comedians, like just doing sets. На большом стендапе какие правила по времени?
4 комика по 15 минут.
Oh, you get 4 comedians, 15 minutes each.
Plus
okay, and in New York, it actually is more like that. It's called showcase sets.
Yeah,
but in the Midwest and the other cities, it would be MC, feature, headliner. And so I got my first spot hosting. I remember it was the day my grandpa died. It was at his funeral. I got a call, and it was I took the call, but it was for $50. And then from there, I remember my buddy, who is actually my roommate now.
Joe List.
No, he's not my roommate. He's my podcast co-host.
But you were roommates at some time. I'm wrong.
I was staying at our friend lives. Our friend is roommates, and I was staying at their place. Yeah. My roommate. Yeah, he's my roommate now, but I knew him back then more. I knew him years ago. He had a list of clubs in America, and he said, "Send a clip to feature at some of these clubs." Yeah. And I sent a list, and my first feature on the road was this kind of club in called the Looney Bin in fucking Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is far away from me. And it was and they saw my clip. I had a clip, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll let you feature for this amount of money." And then I took a fucking Greyhound, which is the bus system we have here, the very depressing bus system, and fucking did that for years. I just started like knocking on doors, emailing clubs. I would email clubs every month. I would email like fucking 50 to 100 clubs every month with a clip saying I'd love to feature. And then you start building your way up, and just fucking.
You paid your dues,
I paid my dues, and I forgot to collect a lot of the receipts. But, but yeah, and then, I once went on maybe 20-hour bus ride to a gig that got canceled.
Yeah. Yeah, so David was asking before that, and that's an interesting question because when you were starting, you were a screenwriter, right? And you weren't like taking stand-up seriously, but you still did 8 years of it without getting paid. You never had
No, I got paid.
to quit.
I got paid about that first $50
Yeah.
show. That was about 3 years in.
Oh,
I got paid
and
3 years
still,
in.
still,
Uh,
it must have been hard with you, for that amount of time, not getting decent salary from stand-up. You had any second thoughts about it in process?
Did I have second thoughts? No, well, I will say this. For a lot of that period, I was drunk and on drugs. Uh,
That
and
helps.
that gave me some unearned confidence. I don't know. I always knew I wanted to be an artist. I always knew. I mean, I'm really very dumb when it comes to most things, and I really am very bad at most jobs. And so, like, it wasn't even like to have to second guess myself. That wouldn't even be an insecure thing. That would be the arrogance to assume I was competent in any other thing. I really just I sucked at everything, and I don't
That's
mean
an
that.
interesting perspective.
Yeah, I don't mean that like I'm pretending like self-deprecation or something. I really am like a fucking moron, and like
Oh, come on, you write screenplays.
well,
least.
I'm a moron at other things. Like I couldn't like even when I was a waiter, like
Yeah.
they couldn't give me more than like 2 tables at a time without me getting overwhelmed and like you know, but like but yeah, I still write screenplays.
Yeah.
But I originally wanted to write screenplays. I didn't want to be a stand-up. I liked stand-up. I didn't want to be one. I wanted to write screenplays. I was always looked down at stand-up originally. And then what happened was I wrote all these screenplays with my friends. We'd spend like 6 months on them, and then we'd have like 6 people read them, you know. And then I remember one day at the open mic, and I remember I had thought to myself, I was like, I spent 6 months working on a screenplay that like 5 people read. Meanwhile, a stupid dick joke that came into my head earlier that day, I say that out loud to like 60
You get
fucking
feedback
people.
instantly.
Yeah, to 60 people heard a dick joke.
Yeah.
That I thought of yesterday. Meanwhile, 6 months of screenplay. So I was like, the numbers were like, oh man, I like the instant gratification. And so I got caught up in stand up. And then I got my first paycheck with $50, but I got paid from stand up, not screenplay writing. So I stupidly followed the small amount of money.
I can feel you because I was studying screenwriting and the same thing. And I never got anybody to read my screenplays in the first place. Like I did some shorts with my friend, but I never got past that. But then stand up with that instant gratification, as you say, that's insane. Like I can think of something today and then just I know that day, like if it has any potential.
I'm an instant gratification kind of guy, you know. That's just the way it's like. And I still, you know, I got back to writing screenplays with my friend. But there was a period where I was just doing stand up, but like I like that instant gratification. But, you know, there's something you miss with that, which is creating a cohesive structural thing that's like you spend a long time on. So I also try to do solo shows, which are like stand up, you know, under like a thematic kind of
one man show. Yeah.
So that kind of somehow gets a little that thing you got from screenplays, trying to create a structure, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love stand up, and it's tough. I've gone through like, you know, stand up is like a drug that after a while it stops getting you high.
Yeah.
But you still need the drug, you know what I mean? Or you'll go through withdrawal. And then it's, you know, the hard part of stand up to me isn't in the beginning. Yeah, it's struggle, but you're excited and you have fun and you're learning so much. The real hard part of stand up is when you really are in it for a while and you really have to be like, all right, how do I make this exciting? How do I the enemy of stand up is going on autopilot and like going through the motions, and that's the real enemy. And that's not an enemy in the beginning. In the beginning, it might be a struggle, but spiritually or whatever, it's all so exciting. So the struggles now are not having to ride a big. Sorry, I drank a lot of coffee right before this, so I'm rambling. But the thing now is not how to not get your head cut off while riding a bus 13 hours. It's how do I really do this show tonight and really care and get into the emotion of the jokes and care about it, you know?
Если он не против, типа, сравнить приблизительную, вот среднего комика, может не его взять, привести пример, что у нас, например, средняя платка, есть такая фикса приблизительная, типа 15-20 минут, это сколько, ну, в баксах $80. Есть ли у них такое понятие, и сколько это ставка приблизительно, если не секрет?
So yeah, in Moscow, like average comedian gets around $80. That's kind of average for Moscow. Do you have any like estimates how much an average comedian in New York, I guess?
Да, за 20-минутное выступление.
For 20 minutes.
So at the clubs, at the Cellar, it's like, I think it's like 100 on the weekend for a spot, and then on the weekdays it's like I don't know, 50 or something like that. And then I think in like other clubs it might be $25 for a spot, and then 75 on the weekends. Sounds like you all get paid more.
50,
I guess so.
15 minutes?
Yeah, 15. Usually it's about 15 minutes. Yeah. That's the standard. 15 or 12 is the standard time in New York, you know.
А есть вообще понятие, ну точнее...
I can't believe you all get paid more there. What the fuck?
Yeah, we were joking around that American this day it's easy for you guys to just come here, learn Russian, and make your career than grind all your way from New York.
$80 for one fucking spot?
Yeah.
Jesus
I
Christ.
get it. I got it one time, and I don't have any TV appearances.
Well,
but
I
mean, got it only one time.
it's different, like you know, and then on the road you get paid more. It's different.
Yeah.
You know.
We don't have that much places to go on the road.
Ну, можешь, кстати, сказать ему, что у нас же уже были Геффиган, Готфри.
Yeah. By the way, American comedians come to Moscow from time to time. We had Andrew Schultz, we had Godfrey, we had Jim Gaffigan. Really? Yeah, Daniel Sloss, you know, the guy from Scotland. Yeah.
Do you where do they go? Do they do theaters, or there's like
they did shows in Stand-Up Club number 1.
Stand-Up Club number 1?
Yeah, but we also have like a small stand-up club. Like it's really small, but the guys there are they started English comedy in Moscow, so sometimes even beginner comedians come there from China, from Georgia. There was an American.
А сколько в Селларе?
Georgia, the country, not.
Сколько в Селларе посадка, спроси людей?
How many people are like in audience in Cellar? Like how many places? How many seats?
Well, there's 4 rooms at the Cellar, but the main room is McDougal, and that's like, I think that's like 150 maybe. And then they have Village Underground, which is like a bigger room, and that's that might be closer to like 200, 250. I'm really bad at numbers, so I could be wrong about that. And then the 2 other rooms are like maybe like 50.
Ну, в стендап-клубе номер 1 при театральной посадке, по-моему, где-то 250 человек. Шульц.
Yeah. Stand-up club number 1 got 250 seats.
Nice. So, well, maybe I'll go there one day.
One day, sure.
I'm afraid I'll go there.
Be fun.
Fucking say something about Putin and end up in jail.
Yeah.
Andrew Schultz doesn't have much of a filter. Did he say anything?
He did. He went full Andrew Schultz.
I mean, I don't. What's the immunity there? You know, like
people loved it. People really loved it. In some ways, we don't have that cancel culture problem. Like, and you even can joke about.
You had a guy go to jail.
Yeah, that's true. But besides that,
give a shit about people getting mad on Twitter. I don't want to go to fucking jail.
If you forget all that jail stuff. No, I mean, you will not be recording or something, or even if recording is go out, you'll be long gone, whatever. But in club, you won't get in trouble for sure, and people are really nice to comics.
Yeah, you just got to
mostly.
leave, kind of. You just got to get out of there a couple
Just,
before it goes
just
on.
get the fuck out after your
before it
set,
goes on
then
that
you'll be
fucking
fine.
that YouTube fucking streaming. What's it called? The stand-ups or no? What's the thing where he got in trouble on? What's that YouTube?
Yeah, stand-up club #1. That's the
Yeah,
same
their
name
live
for
stream.
channel.
Yeah, fuck Jesus Christ. Yeah, I mean,
That's
yeah, I
crazy.
mean,
No, I'll argue with that.
we how is the guy doing? Is he a bigger? Is he one of the big comics in Moscow?
He's one of the pioneers, and he went with a good career. Like he was on TV for a while, then he went to underground stage, and he helped a lot of comedians. He helped with that club. Like he's a great guy. Like beside all, and he's a great comedian.
Да, он же из топовых, то есть.
Yeah, he's one of the like. Most of comedians will mention him as one of their favorites, and most of underground audience know him as one of the best. Yeah.
Is underground like what we say for alternative comedy, kind of? Like...
Yes, alternative comedy. That would be a right term.
What's his name?
Underground. Idrak Mirzalizadeh.
Idrak. All right. Well, so he's doing well. That's good. He's doing good. Did he have to issue an apology or something? I love Mother Russia. No one ever puts shit on themselves. We go to bed majestic and clean and sparkling. Putin has never shat once. All right.
Такой вопрос еще. Понятие тусовки, насколько оно сохраняется? Есть ощущение, что со временем круг... У нас, типа, можно сказать, что большая тусовка, ты знаешь большое количество комиков, постоянно с ним пересекаешься. Он насколько часто с другими комиками пересекается?
When you were starting, you had some many connections with comedians, like your friends. You hang out with them.
Mm-hmm.
So in Moscow, like that's the main thing. You have to hang out with comedians, and there's some groups of comedians, bigger and smaller. But after a while, after you do it like for 10 years, do you maintain the connections, or you just see each other in some town, just nod and do your sets?
I think the rule of thumb, the more successful you get, the more that community falls away, just because, you know, once you're at, like, that's a pretty high level for it to fall away. I mean, it doesn't go completely, but once you get to like, you know, Jim Gaffigan, then you're just like, you know, on tour alone. You know, you're not like at the clubs really. You just have your own theater. So the more successful you get, but I'm certainly not at that place. So I definitely have a community, but it is true. Like when you start out in the open mics, your community's big. It's like every other comic. And then it does get narrower and narrower. And now, like I work at clubs, I don't see as many comics. I see comics who work at the cellar. So it's narrowed down more to like working comics. But I still see a lot of comics because I'm not doing that well. My community is still fairly big. But like I will say, like, the people who help you the most in comedy are comedians. It's not the industry.
Yeah.
All the help it's not the industry for me, certainly. All the help I've gotten is from other comics. Every other comics got me anything. So like hanging out with comics is still it's a crucial part of the job, you know.
Такой вопрос. Камеди-альбомы, которые у него есть. Почему, для тех, кто не знает, в аудиоформате выходят концерты вообще без видео, подписываются с лейблами. То есть почему камеди-альбом, почему не в YouTube, например, залить, как тот же Рори Сковал или там Hannibal Buress?
Yeah, that's a question I also wanted to ask you, because a lot of comedians I see in USA, like they record albums, not videos. And you as well, like you have to, they both are audio only? Or
well, actually, I actually have some of the footage from my last album. Actually, both of them I filmed that video. Not great video, but I filmed that video. And I'm actually going to be posting the footage from the last album, and then I want to record my next special. But a lot of people are recording more specials now. We have people recording albums, but the way everything shifted, it is becoming way more about video. I don't know if it's just the Instagram has allowed us, but the idea of listening to albums, I love it. I don't know if it's a
me too.
lost
Me
art.
too.
I don't know if it's I love it, and that's how my interest in comedy definitely began that way. But I still remember the good old days listening to Mitch Hedberg, thinking he was black and not knowing anything about him. But like, it was fun. I just didn't know anything. But like, overall, generally on a mainstream level, I think specials are where it's kind of becoming more important because just. I don't know. We're becoming a very visual culture with Instagram, and honestly, to be, and I hate to say this, but even more important than specials is just clips. Honestly, like video clips are really what's driving a lot of people, like Andrew Schultz, and like that's our attention span is really narrowed, which is unfortunate.
But before like that shift. Why was comedy albums such a big thing? Like I see a lot of albums on Apple Music with comedians I never heard of, and you can't find any videos of them. Is it because it's cheaper, or
it was easier
with distribution, or?
Well, it was easier to. It's so much easier to record audio professionally than it is to record video professionally, and so like. You can record audio like for like $800, you know what I mean? But like to make something look good visually, that costs a lot of money. It's gone down. Like it's become easier to do it yourself. And that's why there are more specials now. But there was a time where like you could record audio easily, but you would have, you just wouldn't have the funds to have anything other than like maybe one camera on you or two cameras cutting back and forth. But it wasn't like, it wouldn't look, it just wouldn't look good enough. And also, I mean, I do think like we have become more visual. Like I do think like Instagram and Facebook has shaped our desire to really see clips more so than listen to audio a lot,
For me, I just love audio because I can listen to comedy albums on the road and something like that. But for you, it was such a strange choice because you're such a high energy comedian. And I was thinking to myself while I was listening the last album, Downhill Ever Since, right? Yes. So I wanted to see like what's happening there, like what's happening right now, because you're big on act outs when you're yelling away from mic. I'm like, I want to see it. I really am interested.
Well, I regret not posting the footage. Honestly, I should have shown it as a special, and I'm actually finally now I'm cutting up all that shit to post on YouTube. So I will have the special out. I've divvied it up as clips on Instagram, but I will have that special out. And I regret not. I think people care more about specials now. People don't care as much about albums. But now it's getting to this fucked up shit where like a lot of my friends who are making specials are like, I got to make sure the material in the beginning of the special keeps people watching, which is an unfortunate thing. Yeah. I mean, like, or they're doing, that's obviously true. You want to have people watching, but like, I worry that sometimes people are tempted to make the whole hour not as good because they're going to front load it just to have people keep people from stop watching, instead of looking at the special as something where you're like, I still think it's important if you make a special to just believe people are going to watch the whole thing,
Like what if Mike Birbiglia not opens with a big joke, but that's the whole structure. Exactly. You need to go all the way.
Exactly. And I worry too much. I think there is this like, it sucks too. It's like posting clips, because sometimes people ruin jokes just to get people to watch. And that's an interesting balance. Like closed captions, right? On clips now, everything has to have the subtitles. But a lot of people, and I'm down with subtitles, but a lot of people will put those subtitles in before they say the joke. So you're watching
ruining the punchline and timing. Yeah.
That's literally the definition of ruining a joke, having the punchline be written out before they say it. So now but they do it anyway because they're like, well, this is going to get people to listen, but like if the thing isn't fun anymore, it defeats the whole purpose.
По поводу соцсетей, насколько это важно, потому что, у нас, например, все комики стремятся к тому, чтобы соцсети свои раскачивать, стать независимым комиком, а у него, к примеру, вообще все соцсети, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, везде не так много людей и не так активно он их ведет, типа, оно у него не в приоритете, почему так?
Yeah. Do you think that social networks are a big part of your marketing or of your career?
Huge part. A lot of clubs won't even have people. Who don't have a lot of followers.
If that's such a huge part, why are your social networks such empty place?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Tell me now.
You really have the burns coming late. Just once I got uncomfortable in here.
Sorry, dude. No, just curious. Like,
типа, не работает над ними просто, или почему так?
Yeah,
Nothing makes a burn worse than just not having one for like an hour and just being like really nice and then just like, oh shit. It's like a part of the plan. We're gonna make him feel. We're gonna give him compliments. We're gonna respect him. We're gonna bring his ego up, and then we'll have that dart shot right then. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I mean, like, I try to post clips, and I try to. I mean, for me, I try to do most on Instagram. You know, you know, it's a tough market here. You know, but I try to post a lot of clips, and and try to build it up, but it's tough. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want this to become a pep talk or something.
Слушай,
I knew it.
Сюда вопрос про то, что у нас многие комики.
This better not be an insult again. It's so much scarier. I don't know the fucking. I'm like, what's this one gonna be? How are you still gaining weight after all this time? If you think weight is so important, why have you gained so much weight in this last?
Нет, типа, у нас многие комики через импровизационные шоу, панел-шоу, типа, пора разбираться, что было дальше, набирают медийность, а потом уже к себе на стендап-концерты людей подтягивают. У них такая же схема? Люди больше любят импровизацию, чем стендап, или нет такой?
Yeah, so here comedians mostly they gain audience by participating in panel shows or some improvised shows. And we were curious because from here it seems like in USA it's the opposite. Like you have to be somebody to get on any type of show.
Yeah. So, well, we don't have I don't think we have as many panel shows as places like England and Russia. I don't think so. I think that's a real British kind of
thing,
concept. In America, we have late night shows, and then when you're starting out, you try to get on late night just as doing 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
You try to get on Jimmy Fallon or something, just perform 5 minutes, and then eventually, once you're a much bigger comic, then you do panel on those shows. But doing panel as a comedian on a late night show means you've become pretty successful at that point. I mean, look, even doing late night is great, but even that is kind of on its own level, like the bottom of the rung. Because
congratulations, by the way, great set. I watched it yesterday.
You. I need a fucking compliment after this social media.
Don't get too comfortable,
It did not get me.
It's not over.
but to go to that social media point, I did late night, and I got some followers, but I got so many more followers when Sam Morrill, a friend of mine who does do very well on social media.
I love him, yeah.
Yeah, he reshared my Corden, and that got me way more followers than just doing Corden. So, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, that's how much social media...
Still comedians.
Yeah, matters, more so than late night.
Про зрителей вопрос. Есть ли такое, что зрителям в Штатах больше нравится импровизационный юмор, чем заготовленный стендап? Потому что у нас, очевидно, импровизационный юмор больше в почете.
Yeah. Also, there's this interesting thing that people here love improvisation much more than like wrote out sets. Like they think that improvising is much harder. I know that, like, I'm curious, in USA, is there any, such thing like that improvisation is better than stand-up?
When you say improvisation, you mean a stand-up who improvises, not actual improv teams, right?
No,
You mean,
like any improv show, not like improv like the cult thing,
Типа,
but
приведи пример, обсуждать новости, например, с шутками.
like yeah, you some comedians sit around and talk about news and improvising on them,
but
like
you mean, you mean
like
you mean a
podcasts. Yeah,
yeah, you mean a stand-up improvising. I mean,
yeah.
well, there are a lot of, yeah, I mean, well, definitely a lot of stand-ups on podcasts have become way more popular than the written material at this point, you know? So stand-ups have, podcasting is a way to get way more successful than through just pure stand-up. So I guess on that sense, people enjoy the kind of unprepared thought process and stuff. In terms of riffing on stage, I mean, it a lot of comics do it, and it's a mix. I mean, some comics only do that. There's crowd work, which is where you ask the audience shit, and I guess that's a form of improvisation. And there's some comedians who only do crowd work, you know. And Rory Scovel, this great comedian, just did a special, right, where it's all improvisation.
Todd Berry had a crowd work special.
Yes, right. So, I mean, in terms of it being harder, I think that just depends on what the thing that's harder is whatever you're not as naturally good at. So for some people it's harder, but for some people who are good at improvisation, the hardest thing ever is to write a good joke. So I guess it depends on your perspective. For me, it's much harder because I'm not good at it.
Are you talking about improvisation?
I mean, I'm not as good. Good. Yeah. You know, I try. I
it's just a different skill. With writing stand-up, you're not getting better at improvisation, and you're not writing better jokes if you improvise a lot. It's just.
But there's also there's also different types of, like, there's riffing on stage, but there's also like trying to, when you write a joke, you try to riff.
You know, work it out on stage.
So that's like that's like kind of a
overlap.
And that's a very important skill, I think, trying to write on stage. I like that skill, and I think that skill's very important.
You do that?
I try to. I want to become better at it, but I try to do that, and I need to become a lot better at it. But that I really love. I don't really like crowd work. I don't really like asking questions to the audience that much. I think sometimes you have to. But I tend to stay away from that personally, but I do like riffing and commenting in the moment on stuff. I do love that.
But about working out your material on stage. For me, like, I know some guys do it like great, and they're successful in it. But I think that don't you think that that's also depends on your personality? Like, I don't imagine me coming with a joke on stage just as good as like I'm sitting for hours and thinking deep, you know. Like, I can't go deep on the stage. I can come up with like punchline, I don't know, but I won't write a great joke on the stage because it's too stressful for me.
It probably also depends on what kind of comedic style you like. I mean, if you're a comedian who likes to have like very short jokes, like one-liners, or like kind of like perfectly structured jokes, like, you probably aren't going to write on stage as much. Like Dimitri Martin,
probably not going to write on stage. Even, you know, not only with short jokes. Like, I don't imagine somebody like John Mulaney just coming with all that clever lines and like
I think he does
voices.
do a little. I think he does do it. Yeah, I think he does write on stage.
Thank you. Now my world is ruined.
I think he does. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I think I've heard he writes on stage. I think writing on stage, I don't know if it's good. I think it is an important goal, because when you write down stuff, you don't write how you talk normally, you know? So if you do something on stage that works, it's kind of already it's already in your vocal pattern. So if you can get that working, it's like there's no transfer that needs to be made, Sometimes I'll tweet something
I
that's
can
very,
agree on that. Yeah.
sometimes I'll tweet something that's funny and I'll have to I'll try to make it work on stage, but you have to transfer it. You have to change how you say it. Especially since do you do that at all? Do you tweet something then try to perform?
Yeah, I do that a lot. I guess many comedians do that. You can try your joke on Twitter and then on stage.
It's become a big part of the process. I do it. I've embraced it. I mean, look, we got into stand-up for instant gratification, so tweeting shit is a new form of instant gratification.
Yeah,
not only
definitely.
do we get it's basically at this point we're we don't even wait till we get on stage to get the gratification.
Yeah.
We're
and
literally
also it remains.
Get what?
It remains laughs going down and likes remain.
Yeah,
you can go back, pat you on the back.
Так, а как он как раз тогда, как без этого вопроса, как он пишет шутки, в стол, и может быть ему известно про подход разгонять на сцене, как много комиков.
Мы уже проговорили про это.
Да, но я имею в виду, как много комиков, кому большая часть комиков на сцене разгоняет или пишет, потому что я слышал версию, что в Штатах большая подавляющая часть разгоняет на сцене. Ну и как он?
Yeah, so to finish with writing on stage, do you think that most of comedians do that at some point? Because we heard that in USA, most of guys do that.
I don't know if most. I don't know. Like I said, I think the people who have I assume someone like Dimitri Martin probably doesn't. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of comics, I also think the more successful you get, probably the less time you have to write. So I think you kind of have no choice but to write on stage at a certain point, especially if you're so successful that you're doing fucking movies and shit and auditioning. I think you end up, but I think the more you find your voice, the more you can kind of do it. I do think that is a great way to, writing on stage is a great way to kind of I don't know, get there faster and not have to transfer shit. Because I was saying with tweets, when you tweet something out and it does well, you want to do it on stage. But the problem is people read quicker than they hear. So more
Twitter has its own context.
Twitter has its own context. And typically if something really goes viral, it's not going to work on stage. Because for something to go viral, it can't really be, it can be kind of funny, but it needs that self-righteousness mixed in with the cleverness. But also it has to be less words on stage than on the written page for it to work,
But you yourself, you write you write every day? You have some routine?
I try to, I try to write 5 pages a day in the morning.
Stand up, not screenplays.
Yeah, stand up. I write screenplays each day too, but that's a different thing. Yeah.
5 pages a day.
Вот, я хотел спросить, если ему не сложно, прям технически объяснить, как
его
процесс.
I'm impressed.
Well, it's
to read me correctly.
It's not all good, yeah. But I try to write 5 pages a day on, just.
How do you do it? What's your routine for that?
So I take Israeli coffee called Elite. Do you have that there? That's number one. It's like crack. This coffee in Israel, they don't fuck around. It's and then I look at the news, which is bad idea a lot because
it's a great way to get depressed. I don't know.
But I look at it anyway just to have, if anything, topical or anything sparks up, and then I just try to write jokes, and then I try to tweet a couple of those out. I try to tweet at least 3 out, and the tweeting it out it's a cheap way to write because it gives me a goal right then. I'm like, hey, I'll write for 5 pages, but if I tweet something out that people like, it'll make me feel vindicated, which is shitty. I should feel vindicated just by writing, but this is the culture we're in, so I use that instant gratification to motivate me to write.
Yeah, so whatever keeps you going.
However you can make it work. And so I write 5 pages, and then later that day I tend to talk more of that shit out of my head before I go on stage. I think later I transfer it into colloquial speech.
Каждый день 5 страниц. Сколько у него в месяц беста получается из этого?
So if you write 5 pages a day, and how many of that remains in the end of the month? How much of that like you throw out, and how much you get in the end of the month?
В минутах, да, сколько
Most
минут?
of it,
In
most
minutes.
most of it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Ultimately, some of it does, but the truth is, like, you do all that, and then you're hanging out with a friend, and you say something funny, and you're like, "Oh, I should try that on stage," and that is going to work better than the thing you wrote. I'd say only like less than 10% ever like works, but I do also think writing jokes dislodges, even if none of it works, it like gets your mind trained for it later. You know what I mean? So it like, even if what you're writing never works, just the fact that you're working on jokes like helps your mind be clear for it later. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'll try to think of like, if I look at my Twitter, what jokes. It's tough too, because you have a lot of jokes that kind of like work for a while, you know, because you're excited, and then they die, and you're like, oh, maybe that joke's not that not that good, you know, because for a joke to work, it has to survive the excitement. It has to be good enough, because there's an excitement when you try a joke.
Definitely.
Eventually that excitement fades, and the joke has to be, it's like dating someone. They have to have such a good personality that when the excitement fades, it still works. A joke has to be good enough to survive that, you know.
It's really hard to keep the emotion, like if you're doing 3-4 open mics in a day, and
it's very hard.
And people are just drinking in bars, and you're doing and same emotion, you just can't feel it. You need to play it, and we're not all great actors.
Right. I'm trying to scroll through my Twitter and just see if anything has like become like a pretty. I mean, there's like a reoccurring thing in my act, and maybe one like a couple weeks ago is now in my act. Yeah.
Проверяет он материал типа в день несколько выступлений, что-то из них это опенмайки, или это какие-то проверки, типа как у нас бывают, типа, знаешь, крупные проверки комиков, либо может он на платных шоу куда-то в середину проверенного материала засовывает.
And where do you work out your material? Like you do open mics still, or
I don't really do as much open mics anymore. I try to slip in stuff at the cellar, and then if not the cellar, I try to work at other clubs and just like slip in stuff. But yeah, I'm not really doing open mics as much. So I'm really, the cellar's tough because you want to do really well, but then I still get sick of my shit. So I try to slip in shit there and hope the booker isn't fucking popped her head in during that moment, you know?
So you never do like the new set only? You always have something to back you up from old material?
Yeah, I guess if it's an open mic, I'd be doing all new, but since I'm not doing open mics, I think I'm always just throwing things in. There is a show at the cellar called New Joke Night, where you go up and do 4 minutes of new shit. And so I guess I do all new shit, but I'm pretty much always slipping it into something where I have already jokes that work, you know, and that's its own kind of thing where you have to like, you know, lately that's what I've been doing, you know, but like slipping it in, and then you just kind of go, all right, you look at your shit that you know works, the new shit you're excited about, and then you're like, all right, I can slip into here, right here, and then I'll be back to this old joke. So if it doesn't work, it won't ruin it completely, you know?
Yeah, and I have to ask here, do you still have that days when you bomb all your set through? Like that never, nothing works? Do you still get that? Did you ever?
Yeah, I've had that. I think at a certain point, Louis C.K. said this, and I think it's true on some point. Like the longer you do it, the difference between a bad set and a good set become smaller and smaller. Like you still hate the set, but you still got laughs because you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So that difference is more and more marginal, but it's still there. So there's not really many sets where I go up there and I don't get laughs the entire time. But there are plenty of sets that I hate. and then I feel like I failed. I mean, I still got some laughs. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to like not get any laughs for a whole.
Yeah, I get what it's saying. I get
You know
what
what I
it's saying.
mean?
Yeah.
Like I guess I've been doing it long enough where it's like, I guess for me to do that, I'd have to literally like do only new shit the entire time, and I'm
At least you can comment on how you're bombing, and that
yeah, even
will get
that
you
I would
some
get a
laughs.
laugh. Yeah, it's hard to like. I'm not bombing the whole time ever, but like you know, I definitely have sets that I'm like that sucked.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't in the to me, the goal isn't like. To me, the thing that I struggle with is not whether I got laughs or not. To me, it's like, was I in the moment? And that is something I fail at a lot. And I might have gotten laughs the whole time, but I wasn't in the moment, and I saw myself telling. You ever on stage and you see yourself telling the jokes?
Yeah.
That's the real bomb to me. That's the bomb, because it's like, to me, comedy is about escaping your miserable self for a couple minutes, and if you're on stage and you can't escape your miserable self and you're just not in the moment, you fail. So that's the bomb, and I do that all the time. I bomb by not being in the moment.
Слушай, судя по его словам, что, ну, я согласен, что в какой-то момент становится сложно вообще смешка не получить. Получается, что, ну, судя по этим словам, он уже свой voice более-менее нашел, то есть он комфортно себя чувствует на сцене.
Это очень интересный вопрос.
Да, в какой момент это произошло?
So David asked if you feel like you found your voice, and that's interesting because in 2016 you said you don't know what that means. So I'm really curious, like how you feel now about it.
I think it's a tough thing where it's like you can never really know how you come off to other people.
Yeah.
So other people be like, "Oh yeah, clearly he has a voice. He is who he is," you know. But like, you never really. Every comedian doesn't really know how they come. Even Woody Allen, someone who's like, when you think of someone who has a voice, you're like, oh, well, that's a clear thing. Even he to himself probably doesn't fully know how he's coming off. Well, he knows now he's coming off very badly to people, but like, but like but so it's hard to know. It's hard to really get a sense. I mean, I know there are topics I enjoy. I know I'm high energy, and I know I'm self-deprecating, and I know those things. But to me, a voice is essentially like, you have all these things that you think are funny, and then you bring it to an audience, and the audience goes, that one's funny, those aren't funny. So your voice is the part of the stuff you found funny that the audience agrees with. There's plenty of other stuff that you think are funny, but the audience doesn't fucking find funny, and it sucks. And you're like, it isn't funny. And the audience is like, no. So yeah, your voice is that agreed upon thing between you and the audience.
It's interesting because Kyle Kinane was talking about his first special, Death Oppressor. I don't know if you heard it. Yeah, and he was saying
it's one of the best albums ever. Yeah,
I really love Kyle. It's one of my favorites.
Me too.
And he was saying the opposite of you. So I'm interested what you think about it. He was saying that at that moment he bombed at
Aspen.
In Canada, I guess, some festival, and he was like, I don't care about alienating audience. I can do my stuff now. And then that's when he recorded the Death Oppressor and felt like he found his voice. Like for him, it was not a compromise between him and the audience, but his statement. And he didn't care about what audience think. At least he says so. I don't know him personally, but that's what he said.
Even he, like, I think he's the best. I mean, I think he's probably the most underrated comic in America. So whatever he's saying is correct. A. B, what are you calling the album? Death? What are you calling it? Death? Is that what it's translated to? In America, it's Death of the Party.
Death of the Party. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, I didn't know if maybe there's like a different translation.
No.
I like Death Oppressor.
No, that I mixed some albums. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
That's the Party. Yes, sure.
So I don't know. I mean, that's the balance, I think. So you can't only do shit you can't only do shit like the audience likes. You have to have some shit that you believe in, that you fight for. But at some point, you need the audience a little on your side for even that shit. But yes, you don't want to just be like, I'm only doing what the audience.
Yeah.
You can't do what you think the audience finds funny. All of it has to be what you find funny. But the
Perfect,
audience
sure.
edits what you find funny. So you're not doing what the audience likes. So in the sense, Kanane is correct. I mean, obviously he's correct in that. You're not doing what you think the audience likes. You're doing what you like. But the audience does have to sharpen it or edit it, or on some, even for him, who's obviously one of the best.
I really liked your analogy with sport and art. Like that, there's a sport component in stand-up and art component.
Yeah, it's a combination of an art and a sport, and that's the balance,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved, and I would love you to expand on that, because that's a great analogy for me. Like,
Right. Well, so it's not purely art, because there is a scorecard, which is laughs. So when you go walk into an art gallery and there's a fucking, mattress with a beheaded chicken on it or whatever the fuck, it's not getting a specific emotion. It can get whatever it wants emotion. So there is a specific emotion you want. And if you don't get that emotion reoccurringly, you fail. So that is essentially the sport element.
Yeah.
But then the subjective element, the art element, is just because you got those things, what is the value of what you're saying? And that's the art part, the expression. So you're constantly torn between the two. You need to score well, but you also need to be yourself. And that's kind of, in a way, if you combine what I said and Kanane said, I guess I was speaking as somewhat from the scorecard point.
Yeah.
And he's also saying you got to alienate some people, because you have to find that balance where it's like, I'm scoring, I'm doing well, but I'm unique, and I'm expressing myself. And that combination is what it's like, it's not a movie where it doesn't, people can react however they want and you don't care. It's a performance art where you're desperate for where you need one type of reaction. If you don't get it, you have objectively failed.
Yeah, I love, in that analogy, I love that you're saying that comedians who never get any laughs and they always bet, but they come from art's perspective. That's a great way to look at them, because I always hated when people just gave shit to comedians who didn't get any laughs, because I know that you never know like what becomes tomorrow. But I like that point of view, that that's the art part there, not like.
Yeah, I remember, and it's everything in life is a balance, right? You can't go too extreme either way.
Yes, sure.
If you, it's like your wings, right? If you don't spread them at all on stage, you're a hack. If you don't try to like express yourself at all, you're a hack, and that's too extreme. But if you try to only care about expressing yourself and not getting laughs from the audience, then you become self-indulgent and pretentious. So you have to find that fine line between self-indulgent and only doing it for the audience, and that's the balance that you need,
Можно я сейчас про Хака спрошу?
Да, конечно.
Yeah, because I was really looking forward to this question, because hack comedians, we definitely have hack comedians in Russia, but we don't really have the word for them yet.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, that's interesting, because we speak about them, but we like.
What do you call them?
We don't. We just like look at some examples, like this guy. He did this, and that was like secondary material or something. We just didn't develop the vocabulary yet.
Right.
So what I was asking, like, can you give your definition of the hack comedian? What is hack comedian for you?
I guess on some level, it's someone who's not being unique to themselves at all and just kind of doing what he thinks the audience wants. I guess to me, it's a form of pandering.
Pandering, yeah.
But it gets complicated, because in a sense, all of comedy is pandering a little, because you're trying to get the audience to laugh. So, and also the other thing is, most hacks don't actually think they're hacks, and they might not actually be. They actually are expressing themselves. It just so happens that the thing they're expressing is obvious. So I guess that's the other thing. Maybe it's a lack of uniqueness. It's an obviousness. yeah, you're getting laughs from that joke, but anyone can think of that joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's maybe a not unique point of view is hack. You know, maybe that's the thing.
Про язык еще хотел спросить. У него, у Джолиса, у Луи, у них английский понятный для иностранцев. Это потому, что они выступают в Нью-Йорке на международную аудиторию или просто так получилось, как ему кажется?
Yeah, so what David is saying, and this is compliment. So, yeah, your English is really understandable for foreigners. Like you have really clear English. There's no problem. Although you're from South, which
that's my compliment that I speak my native language well. Jesus Christ, that's my comment. You,
I didn't. Sorry, it's true.
You really know your one language, you know quite well. You really, it's very clear. You do not sound.
No, what I was saying, like,
есть много комиков, которые так разговаривают, что ты не понимаешь, что он.
Most of comedians they're incomprehensible for us. Like they're too. It's not so easy. But
really?
You, Joe List, and Louis C.K., it's so clear, like in language. Has it something to do with performing in New York, or maybe you had some actor background, or do you ever thought about that?
So I guess I haven't thought about it. Are there comedians you have trouble understanding?
Not me personally, but David has. So so there's a level of knowing English when you can watch like Louis C.K., but you can't watch, I guess, I don't know, Christopher Titus, who's like fast speaking and have like many voice.
I mean, I guess me specifically, I kind of speak loud the way an annoying American would speak to an immigrant, like you know, like at a restaurant, like we will have the beef soup. You know, I kind of speak like that anyway. So maybe that, I don't know. I mean, I have a lisp and somewhat of a slur, so I'm shocked I'm so comprehensible. But you know, I think Joe and Louis both kind of have very clear radio voices. You know,
yeah.
They both have like very good like radio type voice. I do not, but I'll take the compliment.
Hey, you're doing fine.
Yeah. I love how you're like, we got a compliment this time. I feel like your insult was way worse than like your insult was like, why do you have so few followers? But here's a compliment. You know English really well.
You know your native language. Yeah,
you know English. Yeah. You're basically like, you're really fat and ugly. But hey, before you feel too bad, I just want to say your hair is pretty clean. You really clean your hair every day.
Okay, now I'm anxious because I think I'm ruining this interview.
No, this is great. I love it.
Слушай, еще такой вопрос. С высоты 15 лет, немного, может, банальный вопрос, типа, какие, может, он ошибки совершал в своем молодом пути, какие бы он советы себе молодому комику дал? Вопрос, может, банальный, но с его опытом интересно все равно услышать.
Yeah, it's interesting because a little background, in Moscow there are not a lot of comedians who do stand-up for 10 years, not to say 15, like we're all amateurs in your book. But what's interesting, like from the height of 15 years, what mistakes you made that you would love to change? What advice you could give to yourself in the past?
Alcohol and drugs definitely slowed me down. I don't, you know, I think I don't know if it's not regrets. You are who you are, and you learn. You know, I don't really believe in regrets, just because everything that you do in life allowed you to learn from your mistakes, and if you didn't have those regrets, you wouldn't have learned from those mistakes. So you wouldn't have been that person. So like I think in life you have to learn from yourself. But like I will say, drugs and alcohol. When I started, I wanted to be Doug Stanhope, who is still one of my favorite comedians. But I think it's important, but I think it was important to realize, it took me a long time to realize that like great functioning alcoholic comedians are an outlier. And the truth is, overall, for the most part, it will slow you down and it will hurt your output, you know? And, you know, Bill Hicks was also a really awesome comedian, but he actually didn't really get good until he quit drinking. And as awesome as Hunter S. Thompson is as a writer, I don't know if you know Hunter S. Thompson, but like his output really suffered. His output really suffered. But I think drugs and alcohol are things that will slow you down, and you will be much better once you sober up and take it seriously. That being said, everyone's going to have to learn from themselves. So you can't just take someone's advice on that, which is, what we're doomed to have to learn this shit on ourselves. But I would say drugs and alcohol, if you can not do that, or if you can keep your that period of your life as small as possible, I think that's good. And also moving to New York earlier is probably better.
Listen, while we're here, I'm really curious what's your take on this. Do you ever heard this expression that comedian is a mirror for society?
Yeah, sure.
Why I was asking, because let's see, we had like you had in 30s, like before even stand up in vaudeville, like everybody was on opium, and then that there was like alcohol period, heroin period, 80s with cocaine, and like after that was prescriptive drugs, and now our generation is mostly I drank too much coffee today and I'm not feeling good. Like we got really healthy, and I'm really glad that we are. But can we say that it means society is getting better and they just don't need comedians who are fuck-ups mostly? And they
you think it's because society has gotten better in what sense?
I'm interested what you think about this. I just what's your take on that?
Why comics now are like more like kind of like sober?
Yeah,
and stuff.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess we have seen a lot of people die from drugs and stuff. So I guess
that's also true.
I guess those people didn't get to have themselves as a lesson, as a wake up call to others,
Yeah.
So I think that plays a part. I think we've become like, I also think like comedy's become a lot harder and more competitive. And so people have to work harder in a way. I think in the 80s, it was much easier to succeed. And so in the 80s, you could have a cocaine habit and just 5 minutes of material, and you could go so far. I think people have to work much harder now because it's become so oversaturated. And when you have to work harder, you can't have as many mistakes. So we're kind of forced into being nerds.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. I wish I was in the 80s and could just fucking do coke all the time and have a Comedy
Yell
Central
at public.
Yeah. But it's a profession that's been glamorized, so now more people want to do it. In the 60s, there wasn't that many people wanted to do comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the more it's been mythologized, the more it's become oversaturated, the harder you have to work.
So and what I wanted to ask, like you got your album at 2016, and then you waited 4 years, but you definitely had material in between. Why you didn't record an album sooner? I mean, it's obviously you didn't record it 2020, right? It was before that, I guess.
Oh, why have you not worked harder?
Come on. No, I will tell you this. At 2016 interview, like a podcast, you tell that you already have a new hour, but you never put it on record.
I think when I moved to New York, it slowed things down a lot because I moved to New York. I recorded that thing, and then I moved to New York, and then it was like I had to start over, really. So it took me a couple of years while being in New York before I felt like comfortable enough to be like, all right, I'm going to work on my new hour. But I mean, New York was like a reset in a way,
Yeah.
But I think that's why, because I think but I didn't really, there's a lot of material you have over in between years, and then you like, when you're Louis, you can kind of just be like, all right, I'm going to burn all this material and then but when people don't see you anyway, and you have to like rise your way up the clubs, you can't burn material as quickly, I guess.
Yeah. You need some.
You have to focus really well. Yeah.
reliable stuff.
Yeah, but I have a new hour now, which I'm hoping to record in a couple months. You know, so
Cool.
yeah, which I think is shorter window, right? I think. Yeah, no, I'm excited for the special, and hopefully I'm going to record it soon, and hopefully it'll be a big hit in Russia, and I can. My dream is to just be, you know, like Bill Hicks was just famous in England, but not America.
Yeah,
My dream is to become just famous in Russia. You know,
that would be something. That's original. I don't know if any American. By the way, I think Doug Stanhope is more popular here than in USA. Like,
really,
at least according to Reddit, because he gets in every underrated list on the Reddit. But here, like every comedian knows about it.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. He got me into stand-up listening to him.
Ну и под конец блиц. Я задаю вопросы на русском, и Раанан отвечает на английском. Луи Си Кей или Дэйв Шапелл?
Louis C.K.
Джордж Карлин или Ричард Прайер?
Richard Pryor.
Руслан Белый или Илья Якемсев?
Илья Якемсев, of course.
То сетап – это не только то, что вы написали. Это то, что происходит конкретно сейчас тоже. То есть ваш текстовый сетап, он встраивается в общий глобальный сетап ситуации. Кто пришел, когда пришел, в каком настроении, какие отношения с сценой, знают они тебя или нет, кто выступал до тебя, кто после, освещение, звук, текущая ситуация, дождь на улице, какая погода, температура, настроение их, в конце концов, смеются они или нет, готовы что-то делать. Это все как вагоны многочисленные, которые крепятся к вашей шутке. Шутки не существуют. Шутки не существуют. Лайкайте всю эту херню и распространяйте.